Hello, everyone in podcast land. Welcome to this week's episode.
On this week's episode of the podcast, we talk about the brand new budget phone from Pixel, the 6A.
We're talking about our favorite news from San Diego Comic-Con, and we're talking about Saudi Arabia's futuristic city called The Line. Okay, on to topic number one. Pixel 6A just came out. Well, the reviews of it came out. The embargo was lifted, and it's what we expected. At Google I/O, they showed the Pixel 6A, and it looks exactly like the Pixel 6, exactly like the 6 Pro, just shrunken down. It has the same tensor system on a chip as those two phones, but with 6 gigabytes of RAM compared to, I think it's 8 and 12 on the 6 and 6 Pro. The phone comes with 128 gigabytes of storage. It has a 6.1-inch screen. It has 2 cameras on the back, but instead of the 50 megapixel main sensor, they're using the 12.2 megapixel sensor that they used on the Pixels 2, 3, 4, and 5, so one that they have experience with. It has the same 12 megapixel ultra wide as the Pixel 6. It has a 4400 milliamp hour battery, and it comes in 3 colors: sage, chalk, and charcoal. The phone is starting at $449, which is, sort of in between like a budget and a mid-range phone, but that's a Pixel 6a. It's kind of what we expected, except it does not have a headphone jack. I think all the previous Pixels in the A series especially came with headphone jacks. A lot of renders showed it without one, so people were nervously anticipating the release of this phone, and here we have it. But I guess my question to you, what are your thoughts on what you've seen, review-wise of the phone, and what do you think of it not coming with a headphone jack?
Yeah, so the fact that it's not coming with a headphone jack, super big disappointment. But it goes back to what you were saying when I was hoping that the Nothing phone would have a headphone jack. You mentioned, hey, these are companies that make wireless earbuds now. They want to hopefully sell some wireless earbuds with that device. And Pixel's doing the same thing. If you try to pre-order the device or buy the device, one of the first things that they suggest to you is going to be some Pixel Buds A as well. So, it's unfortunate, and it's a huge deal breaker for me, especially when we do have some really cool budget phones coming from the likes of Motorola, the new Moto G line that seems to be the only budget phones that's keeping that headphone jack, as well as we got some pretty good stuff from Samsung as well. But based on what we're seeing from these reviews, the cool thing is, this is still using the camera from older Pixel A devices, but the camera's still great. It still takes fantastic pictures. Video quality is still not up to the level as the picture quality, but still very good for a budget phone and pretty much beats all other budget phones out there. I've seen a lot of videos comparing it to the Pixel A series, the Galaxy A series, as well as the Nothing phone. And, it's pretty unanimous that a lot of people are saying that the Pixel is better. On top of that, it has the flagship chip. It has the Google Tensor chip. And even though it has less RAM, it's a really good performer compared to a lot of the other budget offerings. We know the Nothing phone is using a budget chip. And to an even higher extent, the Samsung phones, which are using their budget Exynos chips, definitely a much slower device than what you're getting from the Pixel. That being said, it's not perfect. There are some complaints that I've seen from reviewers, one of them being the fact that it does not have a high refresh rate screen. So It has a 60 hertz screen, and the Pixel 6, the regular Pixel 6 has a 90 hertz, and the Pixel 6 Pro, I believe, is 120 hertz. So that's a little bit of a shame because the competition from Nothing and Samsung both have higher refresh rate screens than this. And then also the downside that it doesn't have wireless charging, which is a huge component of the Nothing phone. It's one of the main features of the design on the back. And, for people who use wireless charging, I think that's a big downside with the Pixel 6a. But those aside, it seems like it's a really, really great device. And especially when you compare it to something like the iPhone SE, which, when they announced this new version of the SE, I was a little bit down on it because of the price increase. And even though the 6A isn't $20 more expensive than the new iPhone SE, it is a much, much better value. You get a much better design. You get an actually decent screen with a good screen to body ratio. You get a better camera, which is very difficult to say when you're comparing an Android phone to an iPhone. Generally, especially when you talk about flagship devices, iPhone is destroying its competition. But this budget phone for $20 more, you're getting a much better camera than you're getting on the iPhone SE. So it's interesting. It seems like, Google is trying to position themselves as the best budget phone for the dollar for most people. And even though it is missing a few features here and there, I think they're kind of winning that battle. Now, that being said, I still got to say, if I'm in Europe, I'm probably going for a nothing phone over the Pixel 6a. Because A, it's cheaper. Even though I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see this price drop a lot quicker in Europe with the competition of the nothing phone. We've already seen the regular Pixel 6 drop in price to compete with that. Or just drop maybe coincidentally in line with the nothing phone. But I think that is overall probably a better value, even though it's a little bit more gimmicky and a little less powerful. But yeah, it's a good phone nonetheless. I'm curious, where do you stand in terms of like the budget phone market? Do you think that this phone destroys the SE, which a lot of reviewers are saying? Do you think the nothing phone might be the best in this lineup? Which one kind of wins out for you?
Just to speak briefly on the headphone situation.
Mm-hmm.
So actually right now, Google is doing, if you pre-order the Pixel 6a, you get the Pixel Buds A for free right now. I imagine once we get closer to the release date, probably on the day of the release date, they'll take that offer away. So if you were someone who was looking to get a new phone and you were looking to get headphones, it's kind of a perfect time to do it. I don't think we'll ever see, like, let's say Apple give you a free pair of AirPods with the iPhone SE.
Yeah.
But in terms of which phone in the budget market, it's a tricky decision, right? Because like you mentioned, the nothing phone, mid-range phone, but has a 120 hertz refresh rate screen. And a lot of people, when they were reviewing it, they were saying, hey, this doesn't have the most powerful chip, but because the screen is so snappy, it seems faster than it is. We're having people say the opposite about the Pixel 6a, that we know this is a powerful chip, it's a powerful device, but because it's a 60 hertz screen, it seems slower than it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of you're kind of in that weird middle ground where it's like, okay, I know my phone is actually faster, but it might seem a bit slower than the nothing phone because the screen is slower. Whereas the nothing phone is slower, but it will seem faster because it has a faster screen. Personally, I guess it comes down to what features you like. As you said, the nothing phone, a little bit gimmicky. It's a very cool gimmick, a very cool looking gimmick. But, when you look at something like the Pixel 6a, you have the Pixel features. You have the magic eraser. You have the live translation. You have the auto dictation. All these special, Pixel things you're going to get with this phone that you won't necessarily get with other budget Android phones.
Yeah.
Another budget phone that I've kind of heard mentioned a lot is the Samsung A53, which has a 120 hertz screen. I think you mentioned it has a lower, it doesn't have as powerful of a chip, but Samsung does have a lot of those same, quote unquote Pixel features, surprisingly. They have the magic eraser. They have, I don't think their dictation is as good. I believe they have the live translation also. So it's kind of, what do you value more? And if you look at the price, it's cheaper than the Pixel 6a, right? So personally, I would go with either the Pixel 6a or I'd go with the Samsung. But as I've mentioned before, one big thing about phones for people is the camera, right? So if you're someone who's going to be taking a lot of pictures on your phone, if you're going with a budget Android phone, it kind of has to be the Pixel 6a.
Yeah.
Because as you said, it takes the best pictures out of a budget Android phone. It beats most phones except for the Pixel 6 and except for the iPhone 13, 13 and 13 Pro. So cameras, photos are important to you, Pixel 6a. If you just want the best performance you can get, probably the Samsung A53 in terms of the best overall performance. But if you want something cool that no one else is going to have, right, then it's Nothing Phone 1. Personally, I'd probably go with the 6A for, as I said, the photos and the Google features that you get. But it's 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 a tricky market because now budget phones are getting a lot better, which is good to see. More competition is better.
You're 100% right. And this is something that I was worried about a while ago. I thought budget phones were starting to disappear, especially after OnePlus started to make their devices way more flagship. And obviously Huawei was kicked out of the North American market, which included their budget brand Honor. It was kind of like a difficult time getting a good budget phone for a while. But now that's starting to heat up again. And I want to give a shout out to another phone that's not available in North America yet, but I hope will be soon, which is the Motorola G82, the Moto G82, which is a fantastic device right now available in Europe. I believe came out just around last month. And it is, once again, cheaper than the Pixel 6a and kind of cheaper than the Nothing phone, but has a 50 megapixel camera, a great screen to body ratio with a hole punch camera and, OLED screens, high refresh rate, huge 5,000 milliamp hour battery. Seeing stuff like that is really amazing right now when it felt like we weren't going to get much budget phones. But the one thing that I'm still kind of concerned about is what's happening with the SE. I really think that Apple needs to do something a little bit better than what they're doing with the SE right now. Not that the SE is bad. I actually still really like the design of the SE. I know it's old, but I still think it's a really cool design. I think the one thing that's really holding it back is battery life. And I don't know if necessarily they need to make a bigger phone, if they need to make a dedicated budget phone instead of using an old design. But I do think they need to do something to kind of make that device a little bit more competitive, especially if, as they've already done, raise the price, if they're going to raise the price again at some point. Do you feel there's something that Apple could do to the SE line to make it significantly better? Do you think that they need to make a bigger phone with more battery life, or maybe just improve the camera?
I think they just need to make a bigger phone. And a bigger phone, they need to update the design. They need ideally an iPhone 11 design or XR or whatever the model is called, right? Everyone else has moved away from bezels, especially bezels like the iPhone SE has. Yes, it's a smaller phone. People like smaller phones, but that form factor it's more than dated right now. It's ancient right now. And yes, it has great performance, but like you mentioned, it's kind of hampered by the battery. And the battery is hampered because the frame is so small. I'd say bump it up to the iPhone 11 design, give everyone a bigger screen. If you don't want to use Face ID because it's too expensive of a technology to put in the SE, put Touch ID in the power button or something, right? You've done it on your iPads. You could do it on your iPhone if you really wanted to. And I don't think I don't think the camera needs to really get that much better because it's still a very good camera, right? I think the only thing that's kind of holding it back right now is the design, which is leading to, a smaller screen, which is leading to a smaller battery, it's holding it back right now. But in typical Apple fashion, I'm sure if they did update the design, that means there'd be an updated price also.
Yeah.
I doubt they would, they upped the price and they didn't really give us anything new. They're still using the same iPhone 8 body. If they bumped it up to the iPhone 11, I'm sure there would be another $100, maybe more expensive. And then is this really a mid-range phone? So I hope that whenever they do upgrade the iPhone SE or whenever they come out with a new one, they've officially moved on from the iPhone 8 body. But we'll see. I think the shame is there are a lot of people who are heavily invested in the Apple ecosystem, or not even heavily invested. They just want to be in the Apple ecosystem. And right now, the cheapest way in is an old design, like an ancient design. That's the cheapest way in right now, unfortunately. Even if you wanted to make the phone bigger and I guess, still keep the bezels and the home button, if you really wanted to, at least give people an iPhone, I guess, 8 Plus design if you had to. But yeah, I don't know. I think Apple is doing a disservice to their fanboys and fangirls and fan people right now.
Yeah.
On to topic number 2, our favorite stuff from Comic-Con. So I'll start off with my favorite stuff. John Wick 4 trailer. Looks great, featuring Donnie Yen, who, love everything that he's in.
Yeah.
A new Black Adam trailer starring Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Looks pretty cool. Lord of the Rings of Power. We got a trailer for that TV show. Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. We got another trailer for that TV show. Marvel showed off, their future lineup of animated series featuring Spider-Man Freshman Year, What If Season 2, X-Men 97, Marvel Zombies. We got Daredevil, Born Again announced. I know you're excited for that one. Another Daredevil series. We got Black Panther Wakanda Forever trailer. And we got updates for the MCU Phase 5 and MCU Phase 6. So I guess if you're someone who's into comics, hence Comic-Con, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of exciting stuff announced. But I guess from the stuff that I've listed, or maybe some stuff that I didn't list, what are you looking forward to out of everything announced at Comic-Con?
Well, for me, the one that hit the hardest was definitely the Black Panther trailer. I don't think I've seen a trailer or a teaser. I think Marvel generally does better with their teasers than they do with their full trailers. I haven't had a teaser hit me that hard since Infinity War, in terms of excitement. And I've always said I still watch the Infinity War teaser trailer every now and then. I still say it's one of the greatest trailers ever made. And I think this is right there with it. It's fantastic. But one thing I really got from this Comic-Con is it seemed like an extension of the streaming wars, which, like you mentioned, there's a Daredevil TV show. Honestly, not as excited about it just because it's coming from Disney instead of Netflix, and I'm still on the boat of I think Netflix's shows are a million times better than what Netflix has done, and the Disneyfication of Daredevil probably won't hit me as much, but still relatively excited. Charlie Cox is a great Daredevil, but they announced that it's going to be 18 episodes, which is crazy compared to most of the shows, which are only 6 episodes. And I've never really thought the 6 episode thing has worked. They always either seemed like there wasn't enough content to fill the 6 episodes, or 6 episodes wasn't enough to build up a real story. So,
or like rushed.
Yeah.
Too, right?
Yeah, rushed. So, I think the only one, and I think it was 8 episodes, that really kind of made it a really well-paced show was WandaVision. And I like the fact that it's going to be longer. But yeah, this is definitely kind of like a streaming wars. We see a DC show, Sandman, coming to Netflix. Obviously, we see Daredevil and all their shows coming to Disney Plus. The Ring of Power, Amazon. Like, there's definitely this war, and obviously HBO with a new, I was gonna say Hunger Games, with a new
Game of Thrones,
with a new Game of Thrones series. So yeah, these are these companies putting these high budget shows on their platforms to kind of get people to subscribe. And based on what we've said from Netflix's earnings and stuff like that, and the competition, we might not see much of this going forward. You might see scopes kind of decrease in the years to come. So this might be one of those Comic-Cons where we see a heavy focus on streaming that might dwindle as the years kind of come along. So yeah, that's kind of exciting to see. But yeah, overall, I thought it was really cool. Black Panther definitely went out for me in terms of the best trailer. And obviously, the idea that there's going to be 2 Marvel movies coming in a year, and
2 Avengers.
2 Avengers movies, coming in 1 year, going forward, related to like this whole Kang the Conqueror kind of main villain, which is very much like what happened with Infinity War and Endgame. So that's also a little bit of an excitement as well to see if they can kind of hit on that same level. But yeah, how about you? What is like the event or the show or something that's really excited, has you really excited coming up in the near future?
I would have to agree with you. Black Panther #1. That teaser was amazing. Just everything 10 out of 10 for it. And then surprisingly, mostly TV shows. There seems to be a lot of TV shows that I'm looking forward to. As
Yeah.
we both mentioned, The Lord of the Rings looks great. Game of Thrones looks great. The Marvel shows that I mentioned, particularly X-Men 97 and Spider-Man, maybe I guess a bit of a nostalgia factor to that.
Mm-hmm.
Daredevil I'm looking forward to because, as you said, it's an 18 episode series, which we have not seen for Marvel yet. So I'm really looking forward. And unlike you, I think they're going to do a good job. I'm not saying they're going to do better than Netflix because, the Netflix seasons were great. They were amazing. But I don't think they're going to do that bad of a job. From what we've seen from, let's say, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Marvel can get graphic with stuff, or
Mm-hmm.
Disney owned Marvel can get graphic with stuff. So I'm looking forward to it. We didn't mention She-Hulk, the TV show. Daredevil makes an appearance in that too. So maybe we get a little bit of preview
Yeah.
for Daredevil. And then TV shows like Loki season 2 coming out. I think Secret Invasion, another TV show that's coming out. There's a lot on the horizon. And yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'd say definitely more Marvel stuff than DC stuff, but DC didn't really have much to offer, right? They had Shazam and Black Adam. That's all I really remember seeing. I mean, you could count the Sandman too,
Yeah.
but not interested in that. Looks kind of weird. But yeah, there's a lot of Marvel stuff, I guess, to look forward to. I feel like there wasn't as much Star Wars stuff. There's like a little bit of news about, I think, the Acolyte show, and maybe there's something about Star Trek Picard. But yeah, personally, it seems like Marvel dominated Comic-Con for me, and they're getting people excited. And I guess if you look at this like a streaming war, right? If you look at this as streaming wars, it seems like Disney Plus is winning right now.
Yeah.
It seems like they definitely have more stuff that people are interested in. I mean, we're talking about Comic-Con and they have Marvel. Netflix doesn't have a Marvel. Yeah, there seems to be a lot more buzz around Disney. And as we've said before, Netflix is losing members right now, and they're not doing as successfully as they have in the past. So it looks like Netflix is going down and Disney is on its way up, and we'll see how long it continues for, I guess.
Yeah. I think it goes back to what you were saying on the last podcast, which is Disney has a consistent release schedule where there always seems to be something on the horizon. And Netflix has really struggled with that. They've had huge hits, but there's always been a lot of space in between them. Like, I really enjoyed The Witcher season 2. After that ended, there wasn't really something to say, oh, okay, this is going to come in the next couple of weeks that I'm going to be really excited about. Where with Disney Plus, there always seems to be something relatively on the horizon. So like you mentioned, Star Wars Obi-Wan show just finished, then Miss Marvel, and then it's She-Hulk. There's kind of always something on the horizon. And, you mentioned Star Trek Picard season 3. It's not just Disney that's doing this. I think what the Star Trek shows have done is that every time a Star Trek show ends, there seems to be another one just ready to go. So whether it was Discovery or Strange New Worlds, Picard, and why am I forgetting the cartoon? Lower Decks. Thank you. Once one of those ends, there seems to be like either one is going to start right away, or already has started, or will start in the next few weeks, which I think has been really, really cool. They're kind of on a lull right now, but for the past almost 2 years, it has been like that. And I think that's what Netflix has to start getting to. So maybe it's a situation where maybe they start stockpiling up shows, so that they can release things one after the other, or maybe they need to change to a weekly release schedule, which they've kind of have a hybrid right now where they'll release a bunch of episodes and then stop, and then release a bunch of episodes and then stop, which I definitely prefer an entire series drop right away. Or maybe it's just a situation where they have to license more content. Maybe, like you mentioned, there isn't always a Stranger Things being made by Netflix. Maybe they need to bring in more known IP to make something. That being said, they tried to do that with Resident Evil, and I couldn't even get through the first episode of that show. So I don't know. They definitely need to do something, though, and I think you're right. They're definitely losing the mindshare war in terms of the streaming services right now.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of, is it something that they can even fix?
Mm-hmm.
right? Is it something that they even have that much control over? Because right, when you look at Disney Plus, you have all the Marvel content, you have all the Star Wars content, and then you have all the Disney content on top of that. Netflix doesn't really have universes like that. Like they've started, I guess, universes, if you can count Stranger Things as a universe, if you can count, Squid Games as a universe, or sorry, Squid Game as a universe. Maybe you could say the 3% money heist, but other than that, you don't really have huge universes that have been built up already. They're not at that luxury, right? They're in the middle of building their universes out right now.
Yeah.
And so there isn't enough content in each one of those or any of those to say, hey, we have like 2 or 3 or 4 different stories that we can tell inside this universe of its own. So it's kind of, they can't exactly go to the creators of Stranger Things. It's like, all right, we need all these kids to have their own spin-off series and we need you to put one out every year. And then go to Squid Game. All right, we need each one of these main characters to have their own spin-off series. And I want you to follow one for 1 year and then one for the next year. And then follow this guy to America. And like, they don't have that kind of control. Whereas Marvel, they have hundreds of superheroes to choose from. Maybe not hundreds of superheroes that people want to watch. I don't know if anyone's going to watch a Squirrel Girl TV show.
I would.
But they have hundreds of characters to choose from. Star Wars, hundreds of characters and stories to choose from. So I think it's kind of, unfortunately, the position that Netflix is in right now.
Yeah.
And they're going to be in unless they could somehow buy someone, right? I don't know. I don't think they'll be able to buy DC anytime soon. I don't know what types of IP are out there that they could purchase and then, suddenly explode their catalog. And I think because of that, Netflix eventually is going to lose out in the streaming war.
Yeah. Well, there's also the potential of maybe selling. Like if I see, Netflix not doing particularly well right now, maybe if I'm Microsoft, I say, hey, maybe I get this Netflix service, maybe I tie it in with a premium tier, an even more premium tier of Game Pass, and now we can start making TV shows to coincide with the ridiculous amount of IP that we own, from Bethesda to Microsoft itself to Activision. I mean, that could be a huge hit, but
that could.
That's just speculation at that point. I'd be happy about that. I would love to see TV shows about Elder Scrolls and Fallout and all that stuff be made. I actually think we are going to see a Fallout show coming out relatively soon, and it might be HBO. I'm not sure. But yeah, maybe that's a situation where a company like Microsoft or even Sony takes advantage of the fact that Netflix is struggling, even though they're still a huge company and very highly valued. So it would be difficult.
They're still the biggest streaming service.
Yes,
there is. So,
But yeah, it would be cool if someone who had IP could take it over and be like, oh, okay, we can regularly release content of stuff that people are excited about.
Yeah, or even if they partnered with a company.
Yeah.
Right? Like what? Halo came out on, was it Peacock TV or something like that?
Yes, true. Yeah.
Right? I don't know if Peacock is looking to sell the rights to Halo. I doubt it. But if Netflix went out and they're like, instead of being purchased, it's like, hey, Microsoft or hey, Xbox Studios, we want to make all of your video games into TV shows, your biggest video games, right? We want Fallout, we want Elder Scrolls, we want Gears of War, we want Call of Duty, and we want to turn those into TV shows. Why wouldn't you, as a gaming studio, want that?
Yeah,
because that only builds up fandom around the characters that you have the rights to, that you can then make games, and then more people want to buy the games because they're invested with the characters from the TV shows. I mean, you could do that with Xbox. You could do that with PlayStation, right? All the Naughty Dog games. I don't think Nintendo would go for that. But yeah, I guess it's not all lost for Netflix. I mean, definitely not all lost for Netflix. Who are we kidding? But yeah, it'll be, I think, unless they get a huge library of IP, I think they're going to lose out eventually.
Yeah.
Right?
All right. And our third topic for the podcast is a futuristic city being built in Saudi Arabia, or at least being proposed to be built in Saudi Arabia. This city is called The Line, and it's called The Line because it's this very narrow, very long city being built in the desert that is only 200 meters wide, but over 170 or just around 170 kilometers long and 500 meters tall. So it's this very long and tall and narrow, essentially city being built in the middle of the desert with reflective walls so that it kind of blends into its environment. And the whole point of this city is to be designed to be more sustainable and more reflective, literally and figuratively, of the environment around it. So it's designed to run 100% on renewable energy. It is encased completely in this reflective glass that reflects the environment around it. So it's almost like it's invisible, essentially, which is kind of a really cool look. There's some 3D renders on their website that make it look really, really cool. And alongside with this fact that it's supposed to be 100% renewable, there's going to be no cars in this environment. It's essentially going to be designed so that all of your main facilities, your restaurants, anything that you want to do should be within a 5-minute walk. But then on top of that, there is going to be this super high-speed rail that runs from one end to the other, and it's designed to get you from one end of this line city to the other in 20 minutes, which, if my math is correct, that's over 500 kilometers an hour, which is much faster than any high-speed train that I've ever heard. But who knows? Maybe they got some brand new technology. Still very cool. But yeah, this is this kind of really futuristic idea, and it could potentially look like the future of what cities might look like in 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now. And the whole point, even though this thing is very narrow and kind of compact, is they want this to house close to or even over 9 million people eventually. So it's this really interesting idea. I definitely recommend, if anyone hasn't seen it, maybe take a look at it online. It's being built by a company called Neom or Neem, Neom. And it's, like I mentioned, this really long kind of futuristic city. Now, there is some controversy of like where this is being built. Potentially some people had to have been repositioned or pushed out of their area. Obviously, there's always going to be these questions on whether or not, what's the real purpose behind building these, whether it's for publicity, whether it's, to actually look at what the future of a city could actually be like. But nonetheless, visually and conceptually, this is a really, really cool idea. Whether or not they'll be able to execute on this idea, it still remains to be seen. Like I mentioned, even when they talk about the rail, it seems kind of some far-reaching stuff. But have you got a chance to see anything with this line city, this long, narrow, futuristic city? And do you have an opinion on, like, is this cool? Is it scary? Is it kind of like pointless to you? How do you feel about it?
It looks cool. Like you said, it's a big reflective like city. It looks very cool. It looks very futuristic. I mean, it is very futuristic. What they're proposing is, I mean, there's nothing like it right now. So if they can pull it off, that'd be amazing. This whole, I guess, project seems to be the idea of Saudi Arabia's crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman. And he, in the few press statements, he's kind of said that this is his pyramid, right? When you think of like the Great Pyramids of Giza, these are these grand structures. So in his mind, this is his version of that, where it's going to last forever and people are going to remember him for building this. He has set aside $500 billion for the project, which is going to the project. And it's supposed to be done in 2030. Apparently, it's still on schedule to finish for then. I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen, but let's say if this were to be completed, it would be something on the level of the pyramids, right? Like you said, 500 meters tall, 170 kilometers long, 200 meters wide, supposed to house 9 million people. The way they've kind of, I was going to say laid out the structure, but it's all renders right now. It's all planned. Nothing's actually made yet. But there's supposed to be these 5-minute walk neighborhoods where, like you said, you don't need a car. You can walk 5 minutes in your neighborhood to get anything you need, like, schools, grocery stores, where you live, hospitals, recreation facilities, leisure facilities, the high speed train that you mentioned from one end of the city to the other in 20 minutes, which, because there's no cars, it's supposed to have zero carbon emissions for the city.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, there's going to be vegetables that are grown in community farms, which are going to be farmed by autonomous robots, apparently, in the future. Energy and water supplies are supposed to be 100% renewable. Yeah, there's a lot of ambitious stuff, and all of this stuff sounds like, when we achieve our vision of the future, when society fully realizes its potential, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Which sounds amazing. And if it is possible and it does happen, would be amazing. And, a city with zero carbon emissions, and you can get across the city in 20 minutes through their public transit, that'd be amazing, right? That would, think of if every major city could be converted to that, how amazing that would be. If you could get across Toronto in 20 minutes, not have to worry about 401 traffic. Like, how amazing that would be, how much time that would save people, how much stress that would save people, or any major city, right? But it's very ambitious. Not he's a very ambitious person, but nonetheless, it's very ambitious, and we haven't seen anything like it. So I think that's why a lot of people are looking at this with skepticism, because, how else are you supposed to look at something that has never been done before?
Yeah.
Right? But we got, 8 years to go? So in 8 years of this podcast, we'll see if it ends up happening. Maybe we'll be podcasting from the line. But yeah, I don't know. When I saw the renders, the first thing I thought of, and I guess this is the nerd in me, I thought of Coruscant from Star Wars.
Yeah.
This giant, autonomous robotic city where everyone is crammed in and packed together. Not that they're saying that's what it's going to be, but that's kind of where my mind went. These super densely populated cities of the future, or, planets of the future, where it's just people jammed on top of each other. Not to say that the line doesn't sound like it would be very eco-friendly and everyone would have their space, but that's where my Star Wars infested mind went.
Yeah, I could 100% see the Coruscant kind of parallel there. And so this is the interesting thing, right? Like, it's only 200 meters wide. And the reason why I mentioned, could this seem a little scary, is that's kind of narrow, and it's very tall, and there's walls on all sides of you. It could potentially feel like a prison. And, it's one of those things where it's like, yes, I get the sustainability, and to me, honestly, and it might just be me being hopeful, I could see this being done. I think there's potentially enough investment and money and expertise to build something like this, and especially the way that they seem to be talking about it is that it's going to be built in stages. So a portion of it will be done by 2030, and then they'll extend and then extend and then extend to the point where it will eventually reach the point where it can house 9 million people. But I don't think that's what they're aiming for day one. I think that's what they're aiming, maybe, who knows, 20, 30 years down the line. Mm-hmm. But no pun intended, by the way. But there is the fact that, okay, this 100% sustainability, no cars, no emissions, but also the fact that they want 95% of this area to be dedicated to outdoor space and trees and parks and stuff like that. And essentially your living quarters are just like you mentioned, these little rectangular little rooms on either side of the wall, and the interior is basically what you're gonna. It just seems like very, very futuristic, very, in some cases maybe even dystopian. Like, it reminds me a lot of Cyberpunk 2077 as well, where these cities are so condensed, and even, I guess, Blade Runner, where everything is so congested that you have people living in these tiny little boxes anywhere you can kind of put them. But yeah, overall, I think this looks really, really cool. And I would kind of hope for something like this to exist. controversies aside, just like a fully sustainable city to me sounds awesome.
Hmm.
My question is, based on these renders, is this something that you could see yourself living in? Would you feel a little trapped? The 200-meter wide thing, does that kind of freak you out, or do you just like dig the vision and think like this is 100% livable?
Based on the renders, I could see myself living there. Now they didn't show any living quarters. We don't know how, I guess, crammed this is going to be,
Mm-hmm.
because it is supposed to be 500 meters tall. So, like, if you think of people living in small apartments, it's, I mean, essentially, that's what real estate is right now in most major cities, right? If you look at New York, if you look at Toronto, if you look at Los Angeles, right? Like, apartments are getting smaller and smaller, but instead of building horizontally, we're just building them vertically. It's almost like they've taken a skyscraper and just kind of laid it on its side.
Mm-hmm.
From the renders, now it's supposed to be right beside the Red Sea. So one side of the wall, I guess that's one benefit, right? Because you live on the outside of the line, everyone is going to have a view of the Red Sea on one side, everyone's going to have a view of mountain ranges on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So at least in that sense, you will feel closer to nature. It's not supposed to also have a roof. It's, going to be an open roof, an open air roof. And essentially it's one wall on one side, one wall on the other side, and then all of your community stuff in the middle and, walkways and bridges across the middle. So it's not like you're living in a giant box, but I don't know. From the renders, it looks pretty cool. If you give me an apartment with a view of the Red Sea, I could, I guess, see myself living there, especially if I don't have to sit in traffic for, 40, 50 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Could definitely see myself living there. But, it's very ambitious. Very, very ambitious. But ideally, like you said, this would be the type of future we live in terms of, zero carbon emissions, in terms of 100% renewable energy, in terms of zero traffic. That is the future that I would like to live in.
Yeah.
So maybe if the line is the only place in the world that's like that, I don't know, maybe I'll move to the line. Could you see yourself living there according to the renders? And let's say everything that they've said is going to happen has happened. They fulfilled other promises. And could you see yourself living there?
100%. Yeah. Yeah, I'm 100% on board. It's funny because, you look at dystopian things like Blade Runner or even Cyberpunk 2077, and I've always been like, you know what, this is a pretty nice city. I could live here, even though it's intended to give you the opposite impression. So I could see a lot of people who have looked at this and felt like, oh, maybe this isn't. But the fact that they put so much emphasis on nature being in the center, and even in this render, most of it is going through like these really complex parks and stuff like that. It looks really nice. I could 100% see myself here. And the fact that I don't have to drive and can get from one end to the other on this super fast 500-kilometer-an-hour rail in 20 minutes and be 5-minute walk from everything. Yeah, this is like a dream come true for me.
If you live in the middle, you could get to either side in 10 minutes. So,
which honestly, even if it could go that fast, I would imagine it's going to take way longer because it's going to have to stop at some point. Like, I'm pretty sure it's not just going to take you from one end to the other. So you got to spend an hour walking back to the middle if you were on one end. But anyways, that's not the point. Point is, I do think this is really cool. Yeah, and I could definitely see myself living there.
Yeah.
I would actually like to live there. If this is successful, and like you mentioned, very aspirational, almost like the pyramids, you would hope that something like this could perpetuate throughout the world and potentially be implemented maybe in different ways to work with different climates, because obviously this is being built in a desert where climate is very controlled, so something like this would be a lot easier. But even if they can use this concept in other places, if it's successful, the idea of having multiple cities that are designed to be synonymous with the environments that they're built in, be sustainable, renewable energy, not polluting the environment, that is that is something that I would definitely love to see all over the world if they could actually pull it off.
Yeah. Big if. But
big if, yeah.
Like I said, in 8 years, check back in with the podcast. We'll let you know what happened. Any closing statements?
No, just want to give a shout out to Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which came out. Apparently is very, very good. I don't know when I'll be playing that, but, I've spoken about the second game many times on this podcast, and I'm just glad the series is finally getting some recognition. So go Nintendo. They're doing really good. They launched 2 fantastic games in this past month with Live Alive and Xenoblade Chronicles. And it seems like Nintendo's actually competing with the big dogs with PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, despite the fact that the console's quite old at this point.
Yeah. Go Nintendo.
Yeah.
Take it easy, everyone in podcast land.
Catch you in the next episode.